Clovis, New Mexico, right along Highway 60. We've got storms. These are initial storms that are developing, relatively soft towers, I thought initially, but now they are turning into robust thunderstorms. But this is on the eastern side of that instability axis. And I do think that the main show, the main round of supercells, is going to initiate on a pseudo dry line off the terrain well to the west of Clovis to Tucumcari area, probably near Santa Rosa down to Roswell. But it does look like the strongest low-level wind shear is right along this stationary boundary here, where surface winds are beginning to hold out of the southeast. As this boundary washes out, instability is starting to build along it too. So as those supercells approach from the southwest, they should interact with this boundary and potentially produce tornadoes. That's especially late afternoon and evening. These storms, again, I think are not going to be the tornado producers. These are developing along the east side of the instability axis as that low-level jet gets pushed up and over the shallow, stable layer at the surface on the north side of that stationary front, which now seems to be starting to lift north as a bit of a warm front, with that trough developing off to the southwest, continuing to deepen. And then the flow, mid to upper level flow, is also increasing at high levels. That's enhancing the wind shear for storm organization. There is plenty of deep layer shear, though, for supercells. And in terms of that instability, the RAP is already analyzing 2,000 to 3,000 joules per kilogram surface-based CAPE, which is also plenty of instability for supercell storms. But these storms are orienting along a north-south boundary on the east side of the instability axis, just west of the Texas Panhandle border. It is possible that these could lift off to the northeast and produce a flash flood threat, but I still think that way to the west, that's where those storms should organize. But you can't see some scud hanging down from this base here. This is to the north of Clovis. That area I'm also keeping an eye on. So I'm not going to leave these storms until it's apparent that the ones are developing further west on that pseudo dry line. But you still never know. These storms could develop and produce some quick spin-ups, but it does look like the wind shear is not going to be in place until a little bit later as that low-level jet starts to increase. But visually looking up at the clouds, these low clouds are ripping by from south to north. So the wind shear is not terrible out here. And this is the same trough that's eventually going to pick up and then kick out the Hurricane Michael. That looks like it's going to make landfall in the central or eastern Gulf of Mexico. There is even a chance that it could be a major hurricane. Some of the latest model guidance are suggesting a stronger storm than is currently forecast, but there still is quite a bit of shear over the Gulf of Mexico ahead of this system, which should prevent rapid intensification, but you never know this time of year. But I'm going to be chasing tornadoes here over the next few days and a flash flood threat that's going to evolve over the Texas Panhandle. So today it looks like eastern New Mexico, and tomorrow over the Texas Panhandle mainly with that flash flood threat and severe weather. And then Tuesday it looks like an even more widespread severe weather event across the entire warm sector as that trough begins to eject, continues to deepen. But these slow-moving troughs, you'll get these multiple days in a row of storm chasing. That's what we have here. We have already had a few days under our belt. Today's a substantial storm chase. Tomorrow in the Texas Panhandle is probably going to be more of a flash flood threat. But then on Tuesday, I think legitimate tornado threat, and that'll be as I'm following this trough off to the east for an intercept of Hurricane Michael also later this week. All kinds of weather happening. Got a snowstorm in the Black Hills, west of Rapid City, south of Deadwood. Leeds going to get hammered. You can see a little bit of motion at cloud base, but these are still just multicellular storms that are forming over that instability axis. Pretty crisp updraft base, but whenever it has these little holes in it, you can just tell it's not one consolidated base or a consolidated mesocyclone here yet. But these are relatively crisp updraft bases, in the development of these storms so early in the afternoon are indicative of the instability that's in place across this warm sector in eastern New Mexico. I wouldn't be surprised if I end up near I-40, maybe even between the Tucumcari and Santa Rosa area later on today. That's as those supercells lift from southwest to northeast and interact with the southeasterly winds and enhanced low-level shear along this stationary boundary. So stay tuned for updates here over the next few days. It'll be a tornado threat across the southern high plains, and then my focus will shift toward Hurricane Michael toward the middle of this week. That'll be a Wednesday, Thursday landfall. Dominate the storm.